Zadrizes Buzdari Skosdau.
Hey, so in this video, we've all just watched the greatest episode of House of the Dragon so far. But, okay, so episodes 4 and 5 are pretty dang close. But this, episode 8, was amazing. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 11 different things that you may or may not have missed. If you want an hour and a half worth of content on episode 8, I just dropped it last night, go check out my live stream. YouTube demonetized it because I'm a nerd talking about nerdy stuff, and I guess that deserves to be demonetized. But anyway, check out my Patreon if you want a little bit of extra content. Over there, I have an exclusive podcast called Leaks and Lore, and you can join for as little as $1. And also, lastly, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 420. And then make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on. We've only got 2 episodes left of House of the Dragon Season 1, and Season 2 will likely not be airing until 2024. I will guaranteed drop at least 3 to 4 videos a week until that time. So do yourself a favor if you enjoy my content and subscribe. Okay, so the first thing I need to talk about, and this is something that you'll notice when you rewatch the series, right? So the cycle of abuse that has turned Aegon II into this, like, hiding rapist, right? So basically when Diana is telling Alicent the story of what happened between her and Aegon in his chambers, she's basically questioning, like, you need to tell me the truth right now. Basically, I believe you, but no one else will. Like, you were alone with the king, and with Aegon II, with the prince, so it's possible that you wanted this to happen, right? So we find out that Aegon is there when she first enters, and this is the handmaid that dresses as kids, which is even more messed up, right? We find out when Diana enters the room, she sees Aegon, turns around, he disappears, then he rapes her, right? Then she is forced to drink moon tea. But one thing of note, and as a side note, a super side note, because I am talking about the history of abuse between House Hightower and how it's passed down and turned Aegon to who he is. But as a side note, that handmaiden who brings in the moon tea for Diana, we find out at the end of the episode, she is an informant for Mysaria. Probably that moon tea didn't work. Probably Aegon II has bastards everywhere. We actually seen one in the episode 9 teaser, but I don't want to talk about that right now. So let's get back on track. Alicent, history of abuse. We see that her father abuses her. She initially, in the first couple of episodes, especially at the first episode at the turning, she's picking her nails. That is a sign of abuse. She's been abused by her father. He hits her, right? She then carries that abuse on to Aegon. She still smacks him, right? And Aemond sort of doesn't get the grunt of it because he kind of just falls in line, being the third born child of her and Viserys. You know, we sort of see Aegon pass on that abuse to Aemond in the form of, like, hey, he hasn't claimed a dragon. Let's embarrass him by dressing up this pig and saying, this is your time to shine. Go fly this pig. I heard the first flight's rough, right? So the history of abuse starts all the way back, and we notice this in episode 3, right, of House of the Dragon Season 1. We notice this when Hobart Hightower, Sir Otto's older brother, is talking to him. And Daemon tells us that Sir Otto is his second son, right? Sir Hobart is the head of House Hightower, and because of that, Sir Otto was forced to become the hand of the king, which argue he's got more power than the head of House Hightower right now. But anyway, Hobart sort of lets us know that he abuses Sir Otto. Sir Otto then abuses his daughter. Sir Otto also abuses Aegon II. And all of that abuse is sort of amalgamated into turning Aegon II to who he is. Like, he keeps saying, I didn't want any of this. And his actions say that even louder because he's doing, disgraceful things like raping handmaidens. But to be fair, lots of kings did that. Lots of kings had bedwarmers. I mentioned it in my live stream breakdown. Speaking of which, if you don't enjoy these shorter videos, check that out. I did a live stream last night for an hour and a half. It's linked down below in the description, and I did a full-out breakdown. Talked about every single thing that happened in the episode, and then some. And mostly, I reference what goes on in the TV show and what goes on in the books, but that's linked down below in the description. So, what I mentioned was that Aegon really, he's so messed up mentally, he doesn't realize him being a prince allows him to get any ass he wants. He could literally just have walked the handmaiden outside and be like, yeah, you see that right there? That's my dragon Sunfire. You see this right here? This is my castle. It's my dad's castle, right? I am Prince of the Blood. Want to see my dick? Like, he could have easily done that instead of raping her, and I'm pretty sure she would have, like, felt the obligation. Anyway, let's move on. The history of violence and abuse is passed on to every single member of House Hightower, and this show is successfully making the Greens more humanized. Because when you read Fire and Blood, you realize, oh, Alicent literally just usurps the throne from Rhaenyra because of Rhaenyra's bastards. In this show, Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship is so much more dynamic. They start out as best friends, and Alicent always has this overwhelming sense of duty. This is why she continues to provide heirs to the king. She does her job, and she gets mad at Rhaenyra, and that turns into hatred, and then eventually love, and like more hate, right? But all of that aside, Alicent does her duties, and Rhaenyra, to an extent, does not. So this is what we have added on from, the books, is all these different layers of complexity. It's like, no, they don't necessarily just hate each other because one has bastards and one has legitimate heirs. It's more like they were friends, and then, Rhaenyra feels betrayed because Alicent marries her father right after Aemma Arryn dies. It's not even a half a year before that marriage is announced, so their relationship is very much more complex, and I just love the show. I love everything about it. If you all agree with the history of abuse that I established for the Greens, let me know down below in the comment section. Is there something that I missed? I'm pretty sure Hobart Hightower was likely abused by their father, and then he obviously abused his younger brother Sir Otto, and Sir Otto passed it on to not only his daughter, but his grandchildren, and sort of formed them into who they are. And Aemon is a product of all of that, because he may not have been directly hit by Alicent or Aegon or their grandfather Sir Otto, and obviously not King Viserys, but he gets the grunt of all that because he was tortured and bullied his entire life by Aegon, and then also Lucerys and Jacaerys. Okay, so now on to some things that you may not have noticed. Like I mentioned, the handmaiden that brings in the moon tea for Diana to drink via Alicent is actually working for Mysaria, right? And then just to clarify, this episode is 6 years after the last episode, and this is the final time jump. These characters in their iterations and how we see them now on screen is how they're going to be for the rest of the series until they die, right? So that is really exciting. We're finally getting the actual kickoff of the war. Like, yes, it was tragic to watch Viserys die, but this is the gut, this is the heart, this is the body and soul of this story, and it's finally begun. Like, it's crazy when you go back and watch the earlier episodes and you're like, oh man, the realm is like really peaceful right now, and like really, it's going to be hard to see how far down House Targaryen will crumble, because ultimately the story is about how they lose their dragon. So it's just so amazing, right? So one of the things, aside from the handmaiden, is that Alicent ends up seeing the scar on Rhaenyra's wrist when they first see each other. So remember, it's been 6 years, and Alicent looks at Rhaenyra and Daemon. She says, Prince Daemon, Prince Rhaenyra, right? And she sees Rhaenyra's scar on her wrist that Alicent caused. Alicent cut her in the wrist. That's one thing you may not have noticed, because it's been 6 years and that scar is kind of healed up, right? So Rhaenyra immediately adjusts her dress and pulls that scar in, sort of like a wound, as she doesn't want to show it to Alicent. And the same thing happened in the last episode at Driftmark, right? In episode 7, when Rhaenyra first shows up there, Alicent looks at her and she's just had a baby, right? So she's about to have another baby, and she's sort of still has the pregnancy weight on her, and that's something that's in the books, is why George wrote it in, that Alicent was able to retain her beauty and lose the baby weight almost immediately, whereas Rhaenyra sort of suffered with it, and she had to carry that baby weight for the rest of her days, and she actually ends up having a loving relationship with food, so to speak. When her and Daemon take King's Landing, Daemon still spends his nights with Mysaria, even though they're married, and Rhaenyra says, let the prince slick his lusts where he likes, I'll eat these lamprey pies, and she just gets, really big. So just to clarify, it's very clear that Rhaenyra doesn't want Alicent to see her weakness, like the scar that Alicent caused on her wrist, and the fact that Rhaenyra wasn't able to bounce right back after having those babies. And then another thing you may not have noticed, or you may have, is when Luke and Jace go to the courtyard, we see Eric and Arik Cargill, right? These infamous twins, Kingsguardsmen, who end up killing each other in a duel. They're actually fighting in probably a very similar duel. So, according to one version, basically what happens is, after Blood and Cheese, which is going to be something that we'll probably be judging on this rate in season 2. Basically, after Lucerys is killed by Aemon, Daemon ends up sending Blood and Cheese in to go and kill Aegon's children, and they end up killing Jaehaerys, his heir, right? And then they sneak out. But as a I'm gonna get back at you, Rhaenyra sort of thing, Aegon sends one of the twins, Eric Cargill, over to Dragonstone in the guise of his twin, Arik, because we see Arik is going to be the one kneeling and giving the crown to Rhaenyra, right? So his brother, who's on the sides of the Greens, like one of them fights for the Greens, one of them fights for the Blacks. His brother, who's on the sides of the Greens via Aegon II, dons his brother's armor, goes into Dragonstone, makes his way to the royal apartments, and then gets caught by his brother. And they have a duel. And supposedly the duel ended in seconds, where they both mortally wounded each other. But one of the versions of the duel, and it's probably the one the show's going to go with, is one Eric kills Arik, and Eric dies immediately, but as he's dying, he grabs out his dagger and stabs Eric, and then he ends up dying 6 days later, groaning horribly of a gut wound. So it takes him a while to die, but he just suffers every last day. So that the two of them fighting behind Luke and Jace in the background is foreshadowing for that duel that's eventually going to happen, probably later on in season 2. It depends on how many seasons we get for the show. All right, now here's a complaint for you. Where is Daeron the Daring? So the king and the queen have 4 children. They have Aegon II, they also have Helena, then they have Aemond, and then they have Daeron the Daring. And Daeron the Daring, I've talked about him a few times, right? He's supposed to be this amazing individual who's squiring under Hobart Hightower right now. So that could be why we haven't seen him. But also they haven't referenced him, right? But also there hasn't exactly been the opportunity to be like, hey, where's the king's other son, right? So he's the youngest of the 4 children. I believe he's around Lucerys' age. I'm not exactly sure, right? But he ends up showing up later in the battle and wins some amazing victories for the Greens. But we haven't heard about him or seen him on the show, and he may actually be cut. I wonder who they would give his role to, right? So, let me know down below. Do you think Daeron the Daring has been cut, or do you think he just will be brought up later on in season 2? If I'm not mistaken, we never got a casting leak for anybody cast as Daeron the Daring, right? And then now this is the perfect time, making really good time in this video. I just want to praise Paddy Considine. Go follow this dude on Instagram. I don't believe he has a Twitter, but go follow him on any social media that he has. He deserves the award for everything, right? So Paddy Considine needs to mention that Viserys has a form of leprosy, a Westerosi form of leprosy, and I was like, yeah, this Westerosi form of leprosy is different because it's not affecting everyone around him, like not lepers in historical times who were forced to live in colonies so that they wouldn't spread that disease, right? And I know you can break down the disease and be like, oh, it's in this state where it's not necessarily spreadable, right? But this is all based on what Paddy Considine has said in an interview. So I don't know if it's been officially confirmed through HBO, but when you read A Song of Ice and Fire, you realize there's some crazy diseases that kind of look like what he has. Like his leprosy is a version that eats himself from the inside out. It's why his eye falls out. It's why he's missing fingers. It's why he has all these issues, and he's literally just rotting from the inside out, right? But when you read A Dance with Dragons, and when Tyrion is in the company of initially Illyrio Mopatis, right? And then he finds out, oh, young Griff is this dude who's supposed to be Rhaegar's long-lost heir who died, right? He's supposed to be Aegon who had his head dashed, right? But then Tyrion decides he wants to go to a brothel and ends up getting picked up by Jorah Mormont. Jorah Mormont enslaves him and takes him, or at least is going to take him to go and see Daenerys, right? When this happens, Tyrion ends up getting caught on a ship with Jorah, right? Kind of what happens in the TV show, right? They get caught by slaves, and then Tyrion is sold on an auction block to this dude, Yezzan, and he has this, wasting disease that he picks up from Sothorios. So, Yezzan Zonutsack is what I call him. He does have the pale mare. He gets that. But before he gets that, he's already dying from this weird disease that's eating him from the inside out. It makes him smell like pee, makes him smell awful, makes him smell like death. Whatever that disease he has, Yezzan, who's this slave master, right, who owns Tyrion and Penny and Jorah, right, he has this crazy disease, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Maybe Viserys picked up something from Velaryon, right? Velaryon the Black Dread when he rode him in his youth. So Velaryon could have gotten some sort of disease when he was ridden by Arya to the basically, it's not exactly said where they go, right? And I've talked about this a bunch of times. I even talked about this in the last night's live stream. But basically, Velaryon is claimed by Arya, this emo teenager, and they disappear for a year. And when they come back, Arya is suffering from this crazy, like, illness that's making her burn from the inside out. And we later find out from the maesters that she had these fireworms inside of her that cooked her organs, and they have faces of humans on them. And then you hear that the Rhoynar has these little worms in the river that when you drink the water, they sort of do that same thing. So that's probably what happened to my Nymeria. That's probably what happened to Arya. She drank from the river Rhoynar thinking the water was clean and got those fireworms in her body. And her and Drogon were likely attacked by a wild wyvern or... why do I keep saying Drogon? It's Velaryon, the Black Dread, right? But they were probably attacked, and then Velaryon ended up having this long gash along his side, and this is when he got that disease that he probably passed to Viserys. And Viserys is the only one that has it because Viserys was the last rider of Velaryon. But back on track here. Patty, you deserve all of the awards, my dude. Like, I have never been that sad watching a character die on screen, aside from, like, Daenerys. And, like, Daenerys, I spent way more time with. In Patty and Viserys, I've only spent 8 episodes with. So that just shows you how amazing of a performance he's done. All right, now the last couple of points that I want to mention for this video, we did get a sweeping shot of Dragonstone. Looked amazing, looked incredible, but no gargoyles on the crenellations. Dragonstone is very much something like Castle Dracula in hell. That's kind of how it's described in the books, and every single crenellation has different gargoyles that are snarling. There's dragons everywhere. The architecture itself is twisted, and they obviously had to keep it very similar to how it looked on the main series. So that's why there were no gargoyles on the crenellations. And then Vaemon getting his head cut off. Technically, when they're on Driftmark, Vaemon is making those claims, and then in the books, Rhaenyra dispatches Daemon to go and cut off his head, very much like what happened on the TV show, except for it doesn't happen in front of the king, in front of the Iron Throne, in King's Landing. It happens, Daemon just cuts his head off and then feeds the body of Vaemon Velaryon to Rhaenyra's dragon, Syrax. And the TV show made it way better, right? We got this, like, crazy scene where Vaemon just won't stop talking shit, and he gets what's coming to him. And he does have his tongue left out. And that was a precise cut by Daemon, because he literally says afterwards, you can keep your tongue. That was like one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of this series. And then also we got a line from the books, like when Aemon sees that Lucerys is laughing at him because of the pig joke and, you know, the pink dread. He ends up doing that line from the books where he says, "Toast to my 3 strong nephews." And then also with this dinner, right? Before that, we have Jacaerys and Helena, who were initially propositioned to be married by Rhaenyra in the last episode. We see them dancing, and we see how the realm could have been, because that's how you tie the 2 houses together. That's how you do that. The 2 of them dancing, they would have been a perfect match. That is what the realm could have been. But that's not what happens, and that was just tragic. And the dancing between them was just symbolism of like what the dance could have been, and instead it turns out to be this tragic dance of dragons. And then the last thing that I want to mention for this video, right? Remember, I broke the episode down an hour and a half last night in my live stream. It's linked down below in the description. Please go watch it. Even though YouTube demonetized it, consider joining my Patreon. Is the stare down between Aemon and Daemon. This is when Daemon realizes that the only threat of the Greens is this little boy, Aemon. He realizes he's a badass warrior. Daemon accepts in that moment that this is the guy worth dying to take out, because he is the ultimate threat. And that has set up the battle above the God's Eye. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please do me a massive favor and slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 420. Consider checking out my Patreon over on patreon.com/RHuntReviews. It's just a way to get extra content and also to support me, because like I said, my videos are just randomly being demonetized here on YouTube. And then also subscribe and turn your notifications on. That way you get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout the Wait for House of the Dragon coming up now, season 2, or as it's known on this channel, the Long Night